Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. My name is Mallory Wood, and I'm the Director of Marketing at mStoner, and I'm very excited to welcome you to today's webinar, How to Use Social Media to Influence SEO. Patrick, love your opening screen, by the way, that just came up on my computer, and I'm sure everybody can now see Patrick's slides as well. We're going to do a quick audio check to make sure that you can hear me and, more importantly, that you can hear Patrick. So please, you guys are too good. There's some repeat webinar attendees in here already knowing what I'm going to ask. Raise your hand or tweet me if you can hear me. And then, Patrick, do you want to just say hi?
I would love to say hello and good afternoon from beautiful St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, that's
excited
so
to be here,
nice.
and thank you for asking me.
Awesome. I see a number of hands are going up, and thank you, and a number of tweets are coming through. So perfect. Couldn't ask for anything more. Now, we're going to just run through a couple of housekeeping items as we always do, just two today. The first is a friendly reminder. During the webinar, you can use the chat feature in GoToWebinar to ask any questions. I know a number of you have already used this feature to let you know that you can hear me, which I appreciate. And we also have a great hashtag today. It is hashtag mStoner SEO, and you can use that to tweet throughout the webinar any ideas or thoughts that you have, start a back channel conversation. But of course, you can use that hashtag to send us questions as well. So I'm going to be kind of recording all of the questions throughout the webinar, and then I will make sure to ask them to Patrick. We've saved about 10 minutes at the end to run through Q&A, and sometimes we go a few minutes over. If you have to leave right at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's totally fine. We are recording this webinar, so because you are here, you will get an archive in your inbox probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, assuming that technology is working and likes us today. So don't forget about that hashtag mStonerSEO. I know a few of you have already picked up on it, and I will be interacting with you in the back channel while Patrick's presenting. The last housekeeping item is that our next webinar is going to be only 16 days from now, on May 30th, and it's going to focus on multi-device design and usability testing. So that is a huge topic to pack into just 1 hour. Doug Gopinski, one of our strategists, is going to be the presenter. He also leads our responsive web design practice, so I can guarantee that this is going to be a webinar you do not want to miss. The sign-up information is going to come out on the mStoner blog tomorrow, and I'll make sure to include sign-up information in the email that we send you with today's archive. So you can just watch your inbox for that. So let's get started. I am super thrilled to introduce today's presenter, Patrick Powers. He is one of our project managers at mStoner, and Patrick has actually not done a webinar with mStoner before. However, he has more than 12 years of communications and marketing experience. He joined us after spending 7 years at Webster University. At Webster, he was the director of digital marketing and communications, and in the 2011-2012 academic year, he oversaw the complete redesign and launch of the new Webster.edu. So Patrick's presented at regional and national conferences, including a number of CASE conferences. Shout out to the CASE SMC hashtag today. They've got a chat going on at the same time as this webinar, and Patrick was the chair of that conference just a couple months ago. And Patrick's also presented at the AMA Symposium on Higher Education. So even though this is his first webinar with mStoner, he is a very seasoned presenter and very knowledgeable about the topics at hand today. So Patrick, I have talked more than enough. Take it away and dive right in.
Well, thank you very much, Mallory. It was a very kind and gracious welcome. I can only hope to live up to the hype. Well, greetings, everyone. It's a beautiful afternoon here in St. Louis. I hope the weather is as nice there as it is here. Today's webinar is on how to use social media to influence SEO. And I'll just go through a couple of housekeeping items here as well. Mallory Anno mentioned the hashtag that we're using to build conversation around this webinar at mStoner SEO. I can be found on Twitter at Patrick J. Powers. I apologize if I will not be tweeting you back within the hour because I will be doing this webinar. However, also tweeting today will be Mallory Wood, who you just met. She tweets from mStoner Inc., which is the corporate account for mStoner, the company I work for. So, for ado, what we'd like to talk about today. This is the next, let's say, 44 minutes. We're going to address how search engines work. How do these things called the Bings and the Googles find the stuff that we're putting out there? We will talk about and discuss the role of SEO in higher education. Like, why do we care about this at all? And we work to understand just how social media impacts these results. How does tweeting, how does Facebooking, if you can use Facebook as a verb, impact search engine result pages? And then we're going to have a little bit of fun. If anyone is a subscriber to Cosmopolitan Magazine and you've taken a quiz, we have 20 tactics for improvement. We'll take our own little quiz at the end and see who can get the highest score. So, unless anyone has any objections, this is what we're going to be tackling today, and we'll leave it open for discussion at the end. So, let's talk about this. This is not an eye chart. Sometimes when we start talking about SEO and SERP and H1 and H2, we get lost in the lexicon of this industry. SEO is nothing more than search engine optimization. And what you see here on this slide are really just some of the terminology and the acronyms that you're going to run into, not only in this presentation, but if you start to do research on your own and you're reading blogs, these are the typical jargon that people will use when they're describing terms around optimizing content and websites for search engines. Words that aren't on here are things like anchor text, which is really just the text of a link visible to a user. Usually if you're on a website, it appears in blue or it's underlined. That just designates what is at the top of this chart, which is BL, backlinks, sometimes called inbound links, sometimes just frankly called links. But this is one of the key components to SEO, which is the next item on this chart, which is simply search engine optimization. The following term is search engine results page. This is the first page on Google after you hit enter on your keyword, and this is what displays. And H1 and H2 are really tags that you can implement in the HTML of a page to designate some of the semantic structure of a page, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Also not on this chart really is bots or robots or spiders or crawlers. And when we use any of those terms, really all we're really talking about is just an automated program that's used to find and add web pages to search engine indexes. So we've tweeted out a link to a complete glossary of essential SEO jargon. But really, what are we talking about when we're talking about SEO? About this, right? Not specifically the search on this page or the keyword that I entered here, but really we're talking about Google and specifically a very distinct portion of this page. If you're looking at this page, you're probably familiar with it, likely most people are. We'll talk about this page kind of in three different zones. The first is that shaded box at the top. It presents three results. This is for paid advertising. We'll call that zone 1. Zone 2 will go down the right-hand column. Again, paid results. This is Google AdWords. We're not going to really talk about zone 2 either. What we're going to really focus on is zone 3, which is the organic search results. Paid search results only account for about 6% of clicks from search engines versus the organic or natural search, which is about 94%. Generally it's accepted that people have been trained that when they are looking for something on Google and they type in a keyword and they go to search for it, where they are looking to click is going to be in that natural search result area. So really that's the area that we want to focus in on. Is what can we do in a social space that will put us there? And when we say there, in that zone of natural or organic search, really what we're looking for is 3. This chart shows there is a huge, and I'll repeat that again, huge advantage to being in the top 3 natural search results when someone types in a keyword or phrase. This particular chart is broken down by branded searches and non-branded searches. And what it shows is that 90% of the traffic in a natural search click-throughs, 90% of those are happening on the first 3 search results. 10% are happening everywhere else. When we say branded searches, what we mean by that is someone who is searching for a particular university, a particular brand, or a particular organization, accompanied with whatever keyword they are looking for. For example, St. Louis University MBA, Webster University gerontology degree. The non-branded searches are those searches where they are not attached to a specific organization, institution, college, or university. But you can still see that there is a definite advantage to being in those first 3 positions. I can't do the math as fast as I'd like to, but it looks to me about 61% of those clicks are still going to happen in non-branded searches. So this is where we want to end up. This is when we talk about search and optimizing content or sites for search, really what we're trying to do is say, how do we get into that top 3? And it helps to understand a little bit about how website work, specifically search engines work to begin with. Search engines start with the web, made up of more than 30 trillion individual pages. So let's say that again, 30 trillion individual pages. And Google navigates by crawling, using bots or spiders, following links from page to page to page to page. So if you're looking at this map, this is a Frontier Airlines flight map from many moons ago. And if you're looking at this map, and I asked you a question, what were the 3 most important airports? You know, it may be very clear. Just basically, you can look at a chart and see the number of links or flights going in or out of that airport, and you can start to see Denver, Kansas City, Milwaukee. And so if I'm a search engine, I might start in Puerto Vallarta, but because of the links and how I can get around the country, I'm going to start to see very quickly what gets linked to where and start to designate a certain level of prominence to the different destinations based on who's pointing to them, how often they're pointing to them, how frequently. Really, they're trying to ask 2 questions, a search engine is, and those 2 questions are simply, are you an authority or relevant? This is really all a search engine is trying to get at, and this is no different than you or I when we're trying to find out information about a topic. These are the 2 questions we often ask ourselves. Are you an authority on that topic? Are you relevant to what I'm looking for? So if you can say yes to both of these questions, you're already down the road to optimizing content for search. So what do we mean when we talk about authority? How do search engines determine authority? It's a couple of ways, and a couple of ways that I just wanted to highlight here today. Excuse me. The first is through links. You know, we saw the map, and it became very clear, you know, what is the most popular airports according to Frontier Airlines. But links are how bots or crawlers navigate the web. They crawl from link to link, indexing content, indexing sites. This is how they find you in the first place. Obviously, the more links that go to your content, the more authoritative the indexers think that you are about that content. A second factor when it comes to the authority of a site is the time. Is when content is out there for a long and extended period of time, it grows old and it grows stale. And the search engines know this and will index it accordingly. Fresh content always rises to the top. And then the last is just simply domain, .edu. And a lot of people here work for colleges or organizations or institutions that have the .edu domain. And the research will go either way on this. You know, some people will say that search engines weight this domain heavier than others. Some people say, no, it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to an authority, think to yourself, what information are you going to trust? What information are you going to click on? If you are searching for a particular piece of content, and that particular piece of content comes back with a URL filled with consonants and letters that make no sense and stretches on forever, or if that content search result comes back with a .edu, who are you going to trust and who do you believe to be an authority on that topic? So this is the first step, is determining whether or not you're an authority on a particular piece of content. The next is to determine relevancy. And how does a search engine determine what is relevant? And simply they look at the content on your page, how it's structured, what it says, what it's about, and they will start to determine whether or not for that particular keyword or phrase, whether or not that particular piece of content is relevant. This is not an exact science, and this algorithm will change as time moves on. I do not work for Google and I do not work for Bing, but generally accepted that these are some of the ranking factors that search engines will look at, and generally in this order of importance in terms of how a search engine will determine whether or not the content is relevant to the search. And so if we look at this, we look at the URL, and let's say that we are optimizing a page for a master's degree in journalism. And does the URL have the term journalism in it? Does the page title? What does the headline say? And when we talk about headlines, it's important also to designate what is an H1, what is an H2, what is an H3 headline. It's a way that breaks up the content more easily and starts to demonstrate to search engines what content receives the greater priority on your page. Search engines will look at the copy. They'll look at the keywords within that copy. They'll look at images, not necessarily what the image is, but what the alternative text of the image describes, or what the name of the file name of the image is. And then lastly, while a lot of search engines won't necessarily look at the meta description, since it does get included on search engine result pages, we do encourage people to write not necessarily search engine friendly descriptions, but user friendly descriptions. This is the one thing that you get if you happen to fall out of that top 3 position to get someone to click on your particular piece of content. So let's look at it in real life. What does this put into practice look like? This is just an example. I don't know if there's anyone from Georgetown attending this webinar today. If so, kudos to you, because this is a very well thought out page. And you can start to see how this is put into life. You can see we're talking about a master's degree in journalism. We have journalism in the URL. Journalism, Master of Professional Studies Journalism is in the title of the page. You start to see organized H1 and H2 tags. Clearly the body copy is optimized for those terms and those phrases. And this is just a well-organized and well-structured page that is optimized for search on those particular terms. But the reality is this is not what a search engine sees. This is not what gets indexed or browsed, because while this is aesthetically pleasing with a nice orange banner and the blue and the white, that's not how a search engine sees your site. So what is it when they do set up a page? What a browser will see was something a little bit more like this. And you can start to see how this page is structured from a technical standpoint when we talk about H1, H2 tags, the title of the page. And you can start to see very clearly that, yes, even at a very quick glance, this page is about a master's degree in journalism. There's various sites out there that you can use and that you can tap into to do this research on your own. I think we're going to tweet out a link. SEO Browser is one that can do it. But there's several services out there that you can tap into to determine, if the content that you're putting up there is demonstrating your relevancy to that particular topic. So we've looked at a page and how it's structured and what goes on it and what goes where. But what are those signals that the search engine, beyond just the relevancy of the page, what are they that they're looking at, and what percentage are they looking at it? How strong is the keyword usage versus the link popularity? This was a report done by Search Engine Watch that outlines the role of on-page SEO content when it comes to relevance and what the search engines are looking for. And if you look at this chart, yes, keyword usage is the red pie piece there. That's about 11%. Inbound anchors, that orange pie piece on the left-hand side at 18%. But if we're going to look at the yellow and the green and the blue, the three largest portions of the pie, we're talking about trust, we're talking about engagement, and we're talking about link popularity. And so you can start to see how this can be shifted or can be shaped in part because of what we're doing in the social space. What we're doing in social media can bear an impact in terms of how relevant your content is and how great of an authority you are. So why do we care in higher education? It's not enough just to be good at the web because you're good at the web, but how do you apply those tactics and those techniques within our particular industry? You know, within higher education, the best work in the research actually comes out of an annual report done by Noel Levitz and the update, the E-Expectations report. And what Noel Levitz does every year is ask students, well, what is the best way to learn about an institution? And I didn't put everything on this chart, but I just wanted to pull out the two things that we're talking about here today, because those are both answers to this question of what are the best ways to learn about an institution. And so if you're looking at this chart, what we're looking at is the blue bar represents search, and the green bar represents social media. So what this tells us is when they ask prospective students, you know, college-bound juniors and seniors, what is the best way to learn about a college or university's academic programs? 52% said search, 38% said social media. What is the best way to learn about campus location and community? 45% of the people said search, and 35% of the people said social media. When they asked them what is the best way to learn about cost and financial aid, 17% search, 10% social media. And I show this slide not to push social media to the side, but to say that there is an opportunity here. And if people are recognizing search as a great tool to find us more so than they recognize social media as the tool to do the same thing, where are we putting our priorities? The E-Expectations report actually does a great job because it takes it even a step further. Right. Are you investing in an SEO process to improve search results? The majority of people across all institutions are saying, no, we are not investing in our SEO process to improve search results. And you can see the breakdown here. 58% at four-year private institutions say, no, we are not investing in a process to improve results. It gets even greater when you move to a four-year public and to a two-year colleges, where people simply aren't putting forth the effort, the time, and the resources to improve these processes. And so what I challenge you to recognize is that there is a vast opportunity here. Because in the previous slide, we've already demonstrated that search is a valued way that people are learning about your institution, that are finding out about the academic programs, about financial aid. And what this slide shows us is, yes, even though that we recognize that people are seeing that as a means to research our institutions, we just aren't investing in a process to improve search results. Consequently, if you were to ask the same institutions, are you investing in social media, the answer is a resounding yes. And so what I'm maybe challenging this audience to do is to see a way that you can meld the two together, where you can use some of that some of that social media activity that you're going to be engaged with anyway, and what can you do to leverage that activity to benefit your search engine results. So a little bit about what role specifically does social media play in all of this? And so what role, really the question is, how can we make an impact, and what impact does social have to begin with? There's a great video, and we'll tweet out a link to this, but this is a quote from the video from Matt Cutts. Matt Cutts is a Google engineer, and he will post often to a Google Webmaster blog. If you don't read the blog, I strongly suggest that you begin doing so. There's just some great information, and they will often post YouTube videos and answer questions that viewers or readers will submit. And one of the questions asked outright of this Google engineer, do you use social media as a signal? And he clearly says, yes, we do use Twitter and Facebook links and ranking, as we always have in our web rankings. But in addition, we are also trying to figure out a little bit about the reputation of an author or a creator on Twitter or Facebook. Really, this is the first public knowledge that, yes, we are looking at this stuff. We take this into account when we start to rank pages on our search. Now, you'll never get them to spell out the exact algorithm, X number of follows or X number of retweets equals X number of points in terms of who gets a higher search result. But at the end, the result is that Google knows. Google knows how many people you follow, how many people follow you, how many likes, retweets, or shares. They are working to determine the authority of people that are sharing. They are determining who is worth retweeting, who bears influence with what they post on Facebook. And they're also cataloging the speed of sharing. So if you look into anytime into Google's real-time search, you'll see a real-time search dominated by tweets because that is happening rapidly all around the world. The same blog asked Bing, for those that are interested in Bing, do you use social signals when you are factoring your results? And Bing very clearly said, we do look at the social authority of a user. We look at how many people you follow, how many people follow you, and this can add a little weight to a listing in a regular search results. Now, they're not going to say how much weight, and they're not going to tell you exactly how to game the system, because those algorithms are proprietary, and that is their business. But the acknowledgement is simple enough for us to thinking, yes, we need to be paying attention. Google's answer was very similar. Yes, we do use tweeted links and retweets as a signal. It's used as a signal in our organic and news rankings. We also use it to enhance our news universal by marking how many people shared an article. So they are keeping track of all of this. And as social media continues to grow in prominence, I can only imagine that the influence that it's going to bear upon search engine results will only continue to grow. There's a great study, again, done by Searchmetrics, which looked at, this was published last year, which looked at what social signals were on the rise. What was closely correlated to high-ranking Google searches. And so what they found was, if you look at this chart, of the top 6 social signals on the rise, 5 of them are about social media, whether they be Facebook shares, Facebook total likes and shares, Facebook comments, Facebook likes, tweets. You can start to see some of the traditional signals are still there. Backlinks are still important. Keywords and the domain names are still important. But what we're seeing more and more is that social media is bearing an impact. And so what do we do about it? What can we do about it? This is the part of the nation where we have a little bit of fun. Everyone brought their pens and pencil to class, I hope. So what I'm going to ask you to do, you can do this on your computer, is to write on a piece of paper 1 through 20, the numbers 1 through 20. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little quiz. I mentioned earlier, similar to a Cosmo quiz. I'm going to go through 20 tactics that you can employ that will bear an impact on search engines and search engine result pages. And so what we're going to do then is maybe at the end, if we can use Twitter, use the chat feature, is start to see who scores the highest and how far down the road are you to having some great optimized search and social practices. So if we can agree to that, 1 through 20, you've written it all down. Excellent, excellent. We'll start with number 1, and this is, is easier said than done, but really create awesome content. Awesome content gets shared. Awesome content gets linked to. Awesome content is relevant, and awesome content can build authority. This is always kind of the cop-out answer, the easy answer, but it's one I don't want to leave out and stress enough. I'm going to go through 19 other things, but if you're doing this number 1, if I'm going to start of any of them, I'm going to first focus on content. Content first. So if you are creating what you consider awesome content, you believe you're creating awesome content, you can go ahead and give yourself a point. You're 1 for 1. Awesome. The next thing is to your social accounts. What we have here is just a demonstration. This is from Drake University, where they put on their homepage, and a lot of institutions will do this, links to those social accounts. Google, while crawling your website, will notice these social links and associate these social profiles with your college or university. Therefore, posts coming from those linked accounts will help you rank for specific keywords showing up in the frequency of those posts. Really what you're trying to do is to tie your content generating machines, whether it's a Facebook page or a Twitter page or a YouTube account, you're trying to tie that to the authority of your .edu domain. And simply telling Google, yes, these are links and these go straight to our properties is one way to help build that relationship between those two. So if you demonstrate your social accounts, you link to them off of your home page, you can go ahead and give yourself a point. I promise some of these will get more difficult as we start to go through. But they're not difficult at all, really. And it's making sharing easy. You know, a lot of sites and a lot of administrators will be hesitant. Well, I don't want people putting this out on Twitter. I don't want people putting it out on Facebook. Well, the reality is if you're putting it out there on the web anyway, anyone can put it on Twitter. Anyone can put it on Facebook. So why not make it easy for them? This is an example from University of California, Hastings College of the Law, where very clearly, very simply, at the top of every story, they allow them to share this story across the most popular platforms. There are services out there that you can employ, add this and share this, are two of them, that make this very simple and very easy, placing a small snippet of code onto the page to make sharing easy. You essentially want to allow users to share that content, because what that eventually does is build links back to that content and can only demonstrate you as a greater authority of that piece of content. So if you make it easy for users to share, go ahead and give yourself a point. The next one's not as easy unless you know a little bit of code, or unless you can befriend someone who knows a little bit of code. So if you do not know how to change a template or how to insert some code on your page, befriend someone in IT who does. Take them out to lunch, buy them a cup of coffee, and utilize Facebook's Open Graph. I would ask this question, but it's going to be difficult to get a response. But think about it yourself. How many times have you posted, if you wanted to share something on Facebook, you wanted to share a link, a story, and you go and you copy the URL, you go into the Facebook page and you try to paste it in there, but it's grabbing the wrong picture. It's not grabbing a picture at all. It's grabbing a weird description. Yeah, the title's not right. And why, yes, you can start to change some of that stuff on the fly. Like things like the image are a little more difficult to change. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is to utilize Facebook's Open Graph when they can and when they feel it's appropriate to populate titles and descriptions as well as images that are appropriate so that people can find this content better. So if you utilize the Open Graph and define your objects and images, go ahead, give yourself a point. That's simple. Easier said than done, however, is very simply conduct research. You know, oftentimes when I talk to people, they think they know what their keywords are. Yes, I want to be found by best college. Okay, well that is an extremely competitive and extremely vague keyword, and not necessarily what people are typing into Google search. And so I encourage people to conduct the research. You know, if you very simply Google the term Google Keyword Tool, you'll get a very simple tool that Google provides to help conduct that research, and it will demonstrate what the global and local monthly searches of that term are. It will demonstrate to you the competitiveness of that term. But there are other ways to do the research as well. Google.com/trends is a great site to start to show which phrases, terms, and how they are trending over time and what people are searching for. As languages change and as search patterns change, you know, we need to change with them. And so number 5 is very simply, if you conduct research and you know what your keywords are, give yourself a point. Question 7s are very simple, and you could do today, which is very simply complete your profile. So often do institutions neglect this little piece of, this little nugget of information. on the About page of their Facebook page, in the bio description of their Twitter account, they forget that these are searchable too. These are spaces that can be optimized for whatever it is that you're trying to promote. So if you were to look on Facebook and Google through Facebook and see who is using the term Master of Journalism degree program, Georgetown, the page I showed earlier, is the #1 result. It's the #7 result on Twitter. And so if you have a complete and optimized profile on Facebook, give yourself a point. If you have a complete and optimized profile on Twitter, give yourself a point. Next is brand your posts. And what do I say when I say brand your post? Help Google. Help them to rank high on you. Occasionally using your brand name in posts will help Google associate your brand with those posts. Branded posts will allow for you to be more likely to rank your social profiles for your own company name, which helps when there are reputation management problems that you may or may not run into. And so to help Google, encourage people to brand those posts that are going out on those various posts. If you brand those posts and consciously insert keywords tied to your brand in those posts, go ahead, give yourself a point. Tactics 910, claim your place. So if you have gone into Google Places and claimed your institution and have entered in all of the correct information for that institution, give yourself a point. More and more Google searches are becoming local. And so if I were to jump back several slides to the one where I typed in best MBA programs, what you actually saw were results for University of Missouri, Washington University in St. Louis, in part because those are close to me. In claiming your place will help to determine some of those local search results. You can also claim your place on Foursquare and Yelp. And so if you, this is a joint either point, either for either claiming your place on Foursquare or claiming your place on Yelp. And so point number 11 goes to naming your place. One of the beauties of Foursquare, and I'm not a huge proponent of Foursquare, and millions of people aren't using it like they are Facebook or Twitter, but I do think there's some value there, in part because, yes, there are people there, and this is an opportunity for you to add another touch point back to your brand. If you have claimed your place on Foursquare, you can go back and name those places with a lexicon so that when those check-ins get shared on Facebook or get shared on Twitter, they become links back to your institution. And so what I have up here is just a demonstration of institutions that have attached a Twitter handle to their Foursquare locations, and so that when users do check into those locations and share it on Twitter, it becomes a link back to their institution. If you name those places appropriately with your brand and the search terms that will help people find you better, go ahead, give yourself a point. Next one is easy, and this sounds simple enough, but get on Google+. We've already talked about how Google dominates search. Google is search. Google knows who's sharing what, how often it's being shared. And so, yes, we kind of chuckle when we say get on Google+, and people are going to engage with your content like crazy. Maybe they're not. But even if you think of Google+ as a URL submission tool, submitting URLs for Google to index and to look at and to create links to and from, its value is there. So get on Google+. Next is to give authors credit. Give credit where credit is due. Google has a great program called Google Authorship, where if you run a blog, you can attach that blog or that content to a particular Google+ user, hence the need to be on Google+, and it will put their picture next to the person's results. And this is a quote from Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google. Within search results, information tied to verified online profiles will be ranked higher than content without such verification, which will result in users naturally clicking on the top verified results. The true cost of remaining anonymous then might be irrelevance. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is to investigate Google authorship and to give credit where credit is due, in turn to enhance your search results for that particular piece of content. So if you do participate in Google authorship, go ahead, give yourself a point. Geotagging images. Oftentimes when you import images from Instagram, from Flickr, it will allow you to tell you where this place is. We've already touched briefly on how search is increasingly becoming more and more local, and this helps to define what is in that locale. Often GPS coordinates cannot be faked, and people wouldn't go through the trouble of geotagging something in the wrong location. And so people who are searching for particular pieces of content, or they're searching for visuals to represent that content, will rely more heavily upon these geotagged images. So if you geotag images, when you load up to Instagram, you load up to Flickr, and you tell it where this photograph was taken, go ahead, give yourself a point. It has to do with YouTube, and these come from 10 great YouTube tricks you need to know from Mallory Wood, who, when she was formerly at St. Michael's College there in Vermont, did a lot of YouTube optimization. The first is to optimize file names. And so how often, and this is again a rhetorical question, but how often do you shoot a video on campus? You're like, yes, I have got this great 1-minute film, and it is fantastic. People are going to love it. People are going to share it. You download it, you rip it off the camera, and then you go to load it up into YouTube, and you go and you find the file, and it's called dsc045.mov, right? What I am encouraging people to do is to optimize that file name, in part because it's one of the first pieces of content that YouTube will come into with that content, and it's how it will know what that content is about, in part. And so instead of loading up a movie and calling it dsv045.mov, optimize the file name for the keywords of what that movie is about. Maybe it's about, MBA student profiles or MBA student thoughts. The next is to use closed caption on all those videos. And I say that really for twofold. One, because it's the right thing to do. It meets with greater ADA compliance for people who may be deaf and want to view the content of this video. You should close caption those videos. But two, because that closed caption content becomes searchable and indexable by Google. More and more, if a video is constantly referring to a keyword, that video can show up for that keyword. So use closed captions. So if you optimize your file names, give yourself a point. If you use closed captions, give yourself a point. And if you tweet, give yourself a point. And I don't mean tweet once a month or even once a week. I mean tweet regularly. Content is king, and Twitter gets indexed by Google remarkably fast. It cuts index times by 50%. Google, as we mentioned earlier, when we talk about the authority of a particular piece of content, time is a factor. And so in real-time search, as we mentioned, is dominated by tweets. This is how news breaks nowadays. And so in order to increase authority of your content, tweet, tweet, tweet. The next is to identify influencers. This goes a little bit hand in hand with keyword research, but research some of the people that you interact with and that bear influence on some of these platforms. We kind of hinted at a little bit the power and the importance of Google+. This is a great site. Find people on Plus who, from your institution, is influential on this platform. And so I did a very simple search. You can break down these people by their institutions, by where they said that they went to school. So I looked up my own alma mater, St. Louis University, and who would have thought that James Gunn might be the most influential person on Google Plus on behalf of St. Louis University? For those that don't know, he was an actor on the WB's The Gilmore Girls. So if you identify, give yourself a point, and if you chase the numbers, give yourself a point. This kind of goes counterintuitive to oftentimes when we talk about social media, just don't worry about the number of likes, the number of follows. On some respect, I'm saying, yes, worry about the number of people that you get to like you, or worry about the number of people that follow you on Twitter. Oftentimes those numbers get dismissed as, they don't mean anything. As we saw earlier, they do mean something. Google and Bing have acknowledged as much as that, yes, we take into consideration all of these factors, including the number of people that follow you. And if that's a factor that they use to determine the authority of a particular user, yes, you need to be chasing those numbers. So if you set forth measurable objectives for your social media accounts to reach certain target numbers, go ahead, give yourself a point. And then final point is this: create awesome content. This is a bonus point, right? If you created awesome content and you gave yourself a point the first time around, give yourself a second point. Just to stress and to underline how important good content is. Again, good content gets shared. Good content gets linked to. Good content, is what gets found on search engines. So this is a discussion. So I thank you for the time. Mallory, I'm going to ask to join back on the line. I think she's been keeping track of questions as they come in, and we will do our best to spend the next, looks like 12 and a half minutes trying to answer as many as we can to provide any additional insights. So, Mallory.
So I'm going to launch a poll for everybody. Based on your score, how would you classify your SEO efforts? So I suppose we could say if you fell in the 1 to 5, you might select non-existent. If you were in the 5 to 10, that would be just getting started. 10 to 15, we're doing okay. 15 and up, we're Google certified and good to go. So that poll has just been launched, and while you are evaluating your SEO efforts, I'm just going to remind you of a few things. First of all, there's going to be a very short survey once you log out of the webinar, and your feedback's really valuable. It helps us determine future webinar topics and gives our presenters a sense of how they did and if the webinar actually met your expectations. So we always do a short survey. It takes you 2 minutes. It means like the world to us. So please, please, please help with that. And now our results are in, and I will share. About 70% of you have voted. 8% say that they would classify their SEO efforts as non-existent. 46% say just getting started. 42% say we're doing okay. And 4% say we're Google certified and good to go. So Patrick, I don't know if you're surprised by those numbers, but it seems like most people fall in the middle of just getting started and we're doing okay. So that is, I'm closing that poll now, and those are those results. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Yeah, and I think that's probably pretty accurate. When we talked about this at the Case Social Media and Community Conference, I think the high score in the room, I think, might have been a 14 or 15, out of a room of, 80, 90 people. And what I think that shows is, what we were demonstrating here today, none of this was incredibly difficult or incredibly challenging. I think that there's an opportunity there for institutions. More and more the competition is getting fierce for students, and search is certainly a battleground to reach those students. And I think, in the past it has been an underutilized opportunity for a lot of colleges and universities to really maximize their marketing efforts.
So if folks have questions, now is the time to send them in via Twitter or through the chat feature. Before moving into Q&A, I'd like to share a few of my favorite tweets with you, Patrick, since I know you weren't watching the back channel.
Sure.
Josh said, turns out investing in SEO is a huge opportunity in higher ed because many schools don't. So that was just very to the point, and it is a huge opportunity. And Meg Bernier said, I don't care how often it's said, hearing create awesome content is always a great reminder. So thank you, Meg and Josh, for those tweets. We are definitely going to be posting the slides, and we are going to be posting the video of this webinar on our YouTube channel. We will email that to you. A few folks have asked that question during the webinar, so I want to make sure to address that. And somebody, let's see, Jake Dolan on Twitter asked if the file name is on YouTube is still taken into account after video details are filled out. And Jake, the answer to that is a big yes. So when you upload video files to YouTube, the reason that you should have a really great file name that's really relevant and includes your keywords is because YouTube is going to place more emphasis on your file name than on your video title or any of the details. So the file name will always be in YouTube search what is weighted the most. And Patrick, I don't remember if you said this or not, but something that I always recommend is that you don't fill out the video details, you don't fill out the video title until your file is completely uploaded, because then assuming that you've put a really great file name together, you are making sure that YouTube recognizes that file name first and foremost and places the most weight on it. And then the rest of the video details come after that. So, Patrick, a question for you. What was your score out of 20 when you were at Webster University?
You know, I can honestly say we would have done pretty well. You know, we were doing a lot of these things in place. I did this, develop the 20-point quiz after that I had left, but if I were to go back and think about all the things that we were doing, we still would have gotten a 20. We would have been close. But there were things that we could certainly improve upon. You know, and as search engines continue to change and continue to evolve, this list will also continue to change and continue to evolve. You know, these are very basic and simple steps that people can be taking today, you know, to start influencing search. You know, there are, you know, millions of other complex things that you could be doing or should be doing. You know, and there are things that, you know, a firm like ours can look at your efforts and make that analysis. But it's a good start. So to answer your question, we would have come close to 20. Maybe we would have been between, I don't know, 15 and 17, somewhere in that range.
So of those 20 things, if you were going to start with one or two, where would it be?
Yeah, first I would just start with just creating great content. And I did happen to see on Twitter someone was like, well, how do you determine what awesome content is? And I think that depends on a case-by-case basis. You know, and determining your voice and determining, you know, your brand in a digital sense. You know, but creating great content is obviously the first thing that I would worry about. The second is really doing a lot of that cleanup work on your own site. You know, and setting up the site the right way to begin with, allowing for, you know, URLs that you can name, that you can insert keywords into, creating proper page titles and utilizing H tags appropriately. That would be, I think, where I would start, and following up, you know, on all the others after those two.
So Steve has asked, on an earlier slide you mentioned descriptions, and I think this was back towards the beginning of the webinar. Were you talking about description of content that's visible to the user or the metadata that's behind the scenes, or are they both important content fields? And a follow-up question, are keywords equally as important as descriptions as far as metadata goes?
When it comes to meta descriptions on a page, a lot of the research will tell you that search engines don't look at meta descriptions. What was happening originally was a lot of people were just stuffing them and jamming them with keywords and trying to game the system, and really they downgraded the importance of meta descriptions. But what I encourage people is that those meta descriptions, while yes, maybe the search engines don't look at them, at the end of the day, you're still, you know, optimizing search to be found by people, right? There's still people looking at these results and looking at this content. And so those descriptions need to be in a way that clearly and uniquely defines what is on that page. So that answers meta descriptions. And I'm sorry, what was the follow-up was?
Are keywords equally as important as descriptions?
yes, and I mean, and I think you can put keywords into descriptions. And like I said, that was just meta descriptions, but there are other things that you can describe on a page. You know, alt tags are a way to describe what's in an image, as well as search engine doesn't necessarily know, you know, pixel by pixel, oh, this is a picture of a cat, unless you tell it this is a picture of a cat. So, does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yes, I think
please,
it does.
please know that while this webinar will end, you know, please continue to hit us up on Twitter and or to email us directly, and we can help answer some of these questions too.
So from Twitter, Rand Hurl's asking, what's the best way to define images? Is it something you do at the time of upload, or are there tools that can help?
Yeah, I encourage people to name them before you upload them. You know, as I kind of jokingly said, and I know we've all done this, and you take a bunch of pictures, you rip them off your camera, and you load them straight up because that's the fastest and easiest thing to do. You know, it's commencement time, right? And how many times you're going to want to name every single image and describe what every image is in there? But oftentimes on your own site, that image name or that file name becomes a part of the URL. Generally, you're loading it into a file called images slash, you know, dsc045.jpg. And what I'm saying is prior to uploading them, you know, or if during the uploading process your CMS allows for you to name that with a more descriptive and accurate title, that becomes part of the URL. And as long as you allow that particular images folder to be indexed by Google, you're picking up another opportunity to be found for that keyword.
So Eric Anderson's asking, when you say optimize file names or optimize profiles for keyword relevance, are you doing that for the keywords you want to own, or the keywords you already do own really well?
Right, and that's where the balancing act comes in. You know, you might want to be found for top flight, or this is the #1 MBA program in the country. Well, the reality is there's only going to be one. There's only going to be one #1 program. And so it's a balancing act of where are you trying to drive the traffic from, and what are you trying to reach? Are you trying to reach out to people who may not have known you were there and to build awareness, or are you trying to increase the conversion of people who already know a little something about you and are going to be more receptive, because you know that those keywords work? There's a lot of research that you can do within a program like Google Analytics that will tell you what keywords people are hitting on and coming to your site from. Most of the time, those are branded keywords. I am searching for XYZ University and MBA, or XYZ University and English major. And so it depends on what you're using those platforms to do.
So George Thompson's going to ask a question that I think could be a 3-part webinar series in and of itself. So granted, we're at the 2:59 Eastern mark, so a concise answer here might be difficult, but might be best. What kind of analytics can be used to measure SEO success?
Google Analytics. There, it was very simple.
That was super concise. That was
no,
super
and I think you're exactly right. We could do a whole nother webinar, and perhaps we should, on utilizing Google Analytics to perform search research, because Google more and more is recognizing not just the importance of social in search, but of keywords in search, and providing a lot of that information within the analytics package. It's hard to find institutions out there now that don't utilize Google Analytics, and so I don't want to be presumptive and assuming everyone has it. But Google Analytics really is one of the best tools out there to provide that information. What Google Analytics will also allow you to do is to tie your site to their webmaster tools that can provide some additional SEO research and start to demonstrate, what keywords are working. When people hit certain keywords, where are they going? to really help you optimize that content.
I like George replied, yes, just do it. Google Analytics webinar. And actually, you heard it here first, people. We are planning on a 3-part analytics webinar later this year that would span the last half of the year, starting in August and probably wrapping up in November or December. So we would have a 3 classes, 101, 201, 301. So somebody should, theoretically be able to start at 101 and work their way up, or if you feel like you're past 101, just jump in at the 201 or 301 stage. But that is in the works, and so we're going to knock on wood. This was not an official announcement, so don't go tweeting it. But we are planning on doing some analytics webinars later this year. One more question. Oh, and George, thank you. I'm glad you're in for that. All right, one more question for you, Patrick. Oh, just kidding. It's not a question at all. It's just more people saying that they would love to do a Google Analytics webinar. Well done. I think we can end on that note that we've settled we're going to definitely do analytics webinars later this year. So before we completely let you go, folks, thank you so much for attending today. Please don't forget that quick survey. Hey, tell us you want a Google Analytics webinar. That'll just keep it on our mind when you take that survey. And don't forget to join us on May 30th for Doug Kopinski's webinar on multi-device design and usability testing. Patrick, thank you so much for this great webinar. I loved your slides, by the way. We were talking about them in the back channel. They were fun, and we loved them. And thank you, everyone, so much for attending. We will see you next time, hopefully on May 30th, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.